Welcome to Kingdom Daughters Podcast. I'm your host, Marlisa D. Gamblin. Let's get started. You might be asking yourself, what is Kingdom Daughters Ministry? And what is Kingdom Daughters Podcast? And I'm really excited to dedicate this very first episode to discussing what the podcast is, what the ministry is, what we offer, and who are Kingdom Daughters. So let's get right to it. So what is Kingdom Daughters Podcast? Kingdom Daughters Podcast is a podcast for Black women. For us, we are looking to heal from the traumas of racism. If that's you, like a lot of other Black women, then this is the space for you. It is a Christ-centered community for us to be able to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel held, and to feel comforted. And I know from my work as a racial equity expert, going across the country and speaking to a ton of folks, how important it is for Black women in particular to have that space. I'm really excited about this podcast because it's not only going to be focused on topics, that we experience as Black women, but it's also going to help Black women understand how we have been cut from racism. A lot of the things that I've seen, a lot of the conversations that I've had around the country, there have been a lot of instances where Black women have come up to me and said, hey, I didn't know I was experiencing racism in this way. Like I had completely normalized all of that harm and just counted it normal. And one of the things that Kingdom Daughters Ministry, which I'll get to in a minute, is really focused on is partnering with the Lord to help Black Christian women heal from racial trauma. But one of the things that the Lord revealed to me and my team was that we cannot heal from racial trauma until we first identify all the ways that we've experienced racial trauma. So that's exactly what this podcast is for. I'm excited about that. And I'm honored to be doing it through Kingdom Daughters Ministry, which is a new ministry that the Lord actually spoke to me about 3 years ago. He started talking to me about his Black Christian Kingdom Daughters, okay? I was kind of blown, I'm not gonna lie, because if you know about me, you know that I'm a racial equity expert. You know that I focus on policy. You know, I go across the country and I speak about anti-racism and practical ways that churches and organizations and cities and even states can promote racial equity. But I was like, Lord, what is it? Specifically about Black women, and why are you talking to me about Black women right now in this season? And the Lord then walked me through an amazing process where he had me fast and pray for over a year, y'all, specifically interceding on behalf of other Black women. And the Lord was sharing with me his heart for Black women to be healed of the most visceral form of racial trauma, which is anti-Black racism. I was like, wow, I was really feeling the Lord's heart, and it started to make sense. It was just like, the Lord was starting to share with me how a lot of the times as Black women, we are everything to everyone, but who's there for us? And we are working with other people and other institutions to help push the envelope and help bring healing to certain spaces, but who's bringing healing for us? And the Lord was just sharing with me how intentional he was about prioritizing the healing of his daughters. And that's what Kingdom Daughters Ministry is really kind of birthed from, is God's heart for his daughters. And part of the things that we offer as a ministry is a really cool community online platform. I won't speak too much about it, but I will say if you're not plugged in, be sure to be plugged in, okay? This is the place that will have the resources that you need as Black women. A lot of the things that we come up against, it's also a safe place for you to interact with other Black women and just receive support as we navigate life from a place of racism, okay? So whether it's in your school, whether it's at your work, whether it's in your community, whatever it is, we know that we experience it at all fronts. But that community platform will be just a really good place that will eventually have resources, including legal stuff, nutrition stuff, financial equity, all of that. So all the things that we need all in one place. And then the second big thing that we do as a ministry is provide a healing program. And this several-month healing program is really cool because it's in a cohort style. And eventually, as we grow, we'll be able to offer things like trauma-informed therapy. So there's a lot on the ministry side. I want to say, please do follow us on Instagram and on YouTube at Kingdom Daughters Ministry. That is a place that you definitely want to get plugged in, insofar you are actually a kingdom daughter. Okay. So I wanted to go ahead and share a little bit more about why now? Why are we focusing on this podcast now? Why is God focusing on healing Black Christian women now? One thing that I just want to go ahead and say is in my time, just knowing God, I would say ever since I was 14 and onward, I've noticed that God is a God of healing. We see that throughout the entire Bible, New Testament, Old Testament. I want to say for me, I feel almost partial to seeing healing a lot in the New Testament, especially when Jesus interacts with just so much power, right, from the Spirit. And we see a lot of physical healing, but we also see God touching our heart. And that's that inner healing. We see this with the Samaritan woman when, he speaks directly to her. He didn't have to, but he decided to. He spoke directly to her identity. And we see that, again, this is just one example, but we see that with so many examples throughout the Bible that Jesus speaks to our identity and he speaks to our heart. And if that's not sign enough for inner healing and the level of healing that God desires for us, it's like, yeah, he cares about the physical, like the woman who was bleeding, right? He could have just let her be. She had already received physical healing, but instead he decided to call her out and to have a conversation with her and to speak to her identity and to speak to her heart. And I love that because God is a God of holistic healing. So I just want to start there. It's not that God is all of a sudden thinking about healing. God is intrinsically a God who cares about holistic healing, right? And again, like we can take it outside of the Bible. It's not just only in the Bible. I'm sure that your grandmothers and your parents and even great-grandparents have experiences where they can share. I know that I do, where my grandmother prayed for healing and the Lord showed up. And that was in different ways, right? Whether it be mental healing, whether that be physical healing, God cares about healing. But I think particularly in this hour, especially with what's going on in our country and around the world, this is the time where God wants to raise up his Black Christian women for such a time as this. This is not a time that we can afford to be silent. It's not a time that we can rely on opinion. We need to rely on God and we need to rely on his guidance as he guides us through really an opportunity. It's an invitation that the Lord's giving us to guide us through a journey of healing from racial trauma so that we can walk into our purpose. A lot of us, and this is something that the Lord was sharing with me, a lot of us, unfortunately, have been harmed so badly by racism. And some of us know how hard, how much we've been harmed, but some of us, quite frankly, we just don't know because we've normalized it. But the Lord was sharing the extent to which we have been impacted as Black women has really stifled a lot of us walking into identity and purpose. It really has. And the Lord says, no, not anymore. He really wants us to walk in full freedom. And that is why now it is so critically important. Really, I sense this being a movement, not just a ministry, but a movement whereby the Lord raises up millions of Black Christian women to really break off the shackles of the enemy, to raise up into freedom. And to walk firmly and boldly and confidently into their purpose, to where they are fully living into the potential and to the call that the Lord has on each and every one of our lives. So we talked a little bit about, again, why God cares about holistic healing, that He doesn't care just about the physical part, but He cares about our heart, and He cares about the inner healing. And I think, especially as there are starting to become a lot more programs out there for healing and inner healing and mental health and so on and so forth, there can be, I think that honestly, there's more of a receiving, like, oh yeah, like inner healing is important and God cares about it. Like, I think a lot of Christians are coming into that. What makes us different as a ministry and also as a podcast is we're talking about specifically racial healing. There are a lot of folks out there who are not actually solely talking about that. And this is a space for us to talk about that. And I think a lot of things that are often missed in spaces when we're talking about inner healing is, for Black women, a lot of that inner healing is rooted in anti-Blackness and is rooted in the impacts of it, whether that be the direct impacts, right, that we experience on a daily basis, or whether that be indirect impacts, maybe the impact that we receive as a result of our Black male counterparts experiencing anti-Blackness, and then really reinforcing that harm in the form of sexism onto us, right? So, and that's a whole different conversation. Like there's a lot for us to unpack when it comes to why inner healing for racism is so important and how God cares about that. I was speaking about the Samaritan woman earlier. I love the fact that in that example, Jesus brought the disciples through Samaria. A lot of the times, and if you were to look at just an ancient map, a lot of the Jewish people actually went around the other way, and they did not touch or go through Samaria. But Jesus actually took them through Samaria. That shares a few things. One, it shares that God cares about race. Because that was basically like the ancient day, like racism. You can think of it like that. And he also doesn't agree with it. And the people who are walking with him need to understand that. And he was really physically walking the disciples through that, and also emotionally walking the disciples through that of like, hey, my spirit's love. What you all are doing as Jewish people onto the Samaritans, that is not love. That is And one of the reasons why I came here is to walk out love. So he's literally walking out love. So we know that Jesus cares about addressing social issues like racism, just even in that one example. But then in addition, he addressed the Samaritan woman in a very unique way that spoke to her circumstances, that spoke to how she was viewed within society, within her particular society. And I think what we can extract from that is that God also wants to speak specifically to us based on our identity, based on how society views us as Black women, that it's not enough to just have a regular conversation, a generic conversation that, he would have with just anyone, but something specific to our identity, specific to our past, specific to our background, and specific to how society treats us. Thank you all so much for just spending this first episode with me. I know that it was, I would say, a truncated amount of what we are going to be focusing on for the foreseeable future in our podcast. But I appreciate you all getting plugged in. As I mentioned before, this is not the time to be alone. This is not the time to be silent. With what is going on and the attacks against Black women, we need community. And most of all, we need Christ. I really do want to just take this moment to ask you all to journey with us. I would love for you to follow us. We are at all of the different streaming platforms that you can think of at Kingdom Daughters Podcast, okay? And for you to follow us too. We're on Instagram at Kingdom Daughters Podcast. And guess what? yeah, we're part of a ministry too. So follow us on Instagram too, at Kingdom Daughters Ministry. Okay, I'm going to say that again, at Kingdom Daughters Ministry. We want to interact with you. Okay, I hope that you have a blessed day. I am so excited for us to get to episode 2. Stay tuned. Okay, y'all? Bye.